Imagine for a second, if you will, being handed a literal suicide mission. Like you are told to walk into the heavily fortified capital of a brutal, bloodthirsty empire.
Right.
And you have to announce to the dictator and the entire population that their world is about to end. Now imagine running away from that mission, but not because you're afraid they'll torture and kill you.
Which would make sense.
Right. But no, you run because you are absolutely terrified that they might actually listen to you.
Yeah. Completely flips the narrative on its head. I mean, we are so conditioned to view this specific historical account as, just a simple story about fear and a giant sea creature.
Exactly, the Sunday school version.
Right. But when you look at the actual geopolitical landscape of the ancient Middle East, the motives become incredibly dark and honestly super complex.
Well, welcome to this deep dive. Today we are opening up a massive stack of historical, biblical, and archaeological research centered entirely around one of the most debated texts in history, the Book of Jonah.
Yeah, we got a lot of ground to cover.
We really do. Our mission right out of the gate is to abandon that Sunday school version of the text. We're exploring the integrated mathematical design of the Bible, uncovering some wild Iron Age trade routes, linking the ancient Middle East to the British Isles.
Which is just crazy.
It is. And we're examining how a 3,000-year-old geopolitical crisis in Nineveh holds a really provocative mirror up to the political and spiritual dangers of our modern era.
Okay, let's unpack this, because treating this text as an intricately coded historical document reveals an astonishing story about, human nature, global economics, and the terrifying weight of duty.
Yeah, and to even approach the story of Jonah accurately, we kind of have to look at the architectural structure of the book it sits within. The research we're analyzing today approaches the biblical text not as like an anthology of random historical accounts, but as an integrated message system.
Meaning what, exactly?
Well, it's 66 separate books penned by over 40 different authors and spanning almost 2 millennia. Wait, hold on, back up a second. I mean, that sounds a little bit like sci-fi, right? How can 40 different authors, most of whom never even met and lived centuries apart, coordinate any kind of integrated structural code?
Well, they couldn't. I mean, at least not within the confines of a linear timeline. And this is where the source material borrows from physics, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so Albert Einstein demonstrated that time is a physical property, right? It's our fourth dimension. And because time is a physical dimension, it means it has boundaries.
Okay, I'm following you.
So, therefore, something can exist outside of it. The structural argument here from the source is that this text demonstrates an extra-dimensional origin because it consistently writes history before it happens.
That's fascinating. So the idea is the author is positioned outside of our time domain.
Exactly, looking at the entire timeline simultaneously. And because of that, every number, every place name, and every genealogical record has a deliberate cryptographic purpose.
And you see this mathematically in the text, right? Through what the research calls a heptadic or sevenfold design.
Yes, the rule of sevens.
Yeah, like just looking at the first chapter of Jonah, the word great isn't just used repetitively for dramatic effect. It's used exactly 7 times. You have the great city, the great wind, the great storm, the men greatly feared, the great fish, and so on. It kind of acts as a deliberate watermark.
Right. And that sevenfold structure operates as an underlying mathematical signature found all the way from Genesis to Revelation. It essentially prevents the text from being altered without, breaking the code.
Okay, so you're saying this isn't just an anthology of campfire stories. It's more like a highly complex source code compiled by 40 different programmers over 2 millennia, and yet the math perfectly aligns.
That's exactly what the source is arguing.
Yeah.
And if the architecture of this text is that mathematically deliberate, it means the historical setting isn't just background noise. The precise moment Jonah is called to action really matters.
So let's paint the picture of that geopolitical chessboard he was standing on. When exactly was this?
So Jonah lived during the era of Jeroboam II in the northern kingdom of Israel. Now, the Assyrian Empire to the east was experiencing some severe internal dissensions, which gave Israel this rare 40-year window of basically unthreatened peace.
Which is huge for that region.
Massive. Jeroboam II used that time to expand the nation's borders to the greatest extent since the days of David and Solomon. I mean, trade routes were booming.
But the sources point out there was a massive illusion of peace, right? Like people had winter houses and summer houses. They felt completely secure.
Oh, yeah.
But underneath that immense economic boom, it was an era of profound moral decay. The culture had completely rotted from the inside out.
It was essentially the peak of financial prosperity and the absolute floor of spiritual integrity. And right in the middle of this complacency, Jonah gets the call to go preach a warning to Nineveh.
Which was the capital of the brutal Assyrian Empire.
Yes.
And let's talk about the sheer scale of Nineveh for a second, because I'm trying to wrap my head around how a solitary foreign prophet even walks into a place like this. The text says it was built by Nimrod, who's described historically as a first-world dictator, and the city was a 60-mile circumference fortress.
The engineering is staggering for the Iron Age. The inner walls alone were 50 feet wide.
50 feet wide?
Yeah, and 100 feet high, fortified by 1,200 separate towers that reached 200 feet into the air.
That's just unbelievable.
They say 3 chariots could race side by side on top of the walls. It housed a population of 600,000 people, and it had its own internal agricultural system.
So they could just close those massive bronze gates and survive a siege indefinitely.
Exactly, and beyond the walls, they were just infamous for their cruelty.
Right. The research mentions carvings in the British Museum that document the hideous atrocities they committed on war captives, flaying people alive, stacking skulls outside conquered city gates.
Yeah, it's grim. Even the Assyrian kings openly documented in their own annals that their culture was built on pure terror.
So the research presents a really provocative historical mirror here. It looks at the unrepentant complacency of ancient Israel, a nation enjoying immense wealth while suffering internal moral rot, and overlays it onto modern global superpowers, specifically America.
Right. The contemporary prophets of Jonah's time, like Hosea and Amos, were actively warning Israel that their moral decline would invite foreign judgment.
And we should be really clear here for our listeners that we are merely analyzing the source's geopolitical thesis without taking any political sides. We're just neutrally reporting what the text argues.
Absolutely. The parallel the source draws suggests a trajectory where modern nations, blinded by their own economic superiority, might face a similar threat from violent foreign powers if they continue to decay from within. It uses ancient geopolitics to map out the consequences of national arrogance.
Which is heavy. But understanding those specific prophecies from Hosea and Amos is kind of the skeleton key to understanding Jonah's behavior, isn't it?
It really is. Jonah didn't run away from Nineveh because he was intimidated by the 100-foot walls or the violent culture.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Jonah ran out of a twisted, dark sense of patriotism.
Yes.
He knew the prophecies. He knew that Assyria was the specific instrument of judgment destined to eventually destroy his nation, which historically they did in 722 BC under Sargon II, utterly scattering the northern kingdom.
Jonah did the math.
What?
He realized that if he preached repentance to Nineveh and they actually listened, they would be spared.
Right.
By succeeding in his mission, he would be saving the very enemy that was destined to slaughter his own people. He felt a profound patriotic duty to ensure Nineveh burned.
So to make sure Nineveh gets wiped off the map, he actively defies his divine calling. He figures he needs to get as far away from the Assyrian border as geographically possible. So he goes down to the Mediterranean port of Joppa in Book's Passage for a place called Tarshish.
And the logistics of that decision reveal a massive global Iron Age trade network. Tarshish wasn't just, a neighboring port. The ancient historian Herodotus places Tarshish beyond the Pillars of Hercules.
Which is what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar.
Exactly.
So he is leaving the Mediterranean entirely and heading out into the open Atlantic Ocean. How does a Bronze or Iron Age culture even facilitate that kind of deep water navigation?
Well, they used massive Phoenician cargo ships, commonly referred to in ancient texts as ships of Tarshish. These were basically the supertankers of the ancient world. They were engineered for deep-sea swells and were capable of sustaining 3-year round-trip voyages.
3 years? Wow.
Yeah, and the word Tarshish itself derives from an Akkadian root meaning to be smelted. This destination was the ancient world's primary source of silver, iron, lead, and crucially, tin.
Tin, which was like the oil of the ancient world, right? Because you couldn't forge bronze weapons or tools without it. Which brings up this wild archaeological mind-bender in the research. The strong historical link between Tarshish and the British Isles. The very word Britain translates to source of tin.
Right, and the evidence of global Bronze Age commerce reaching the British Isles dates back to 1500 BC. heavily involving sites near Stonehenge.
Right.
By the Roman period, Cornwall, England was exporting massive quantities of Britannia metal.
Britannia metal, which is a highly specific, durable alloy. It's 93% tin, 5% antimony, and 2% copper. It was workable, hard, perfect for urns and maces.
Yeah.
So let me get this straight. Jonah is trying to hop a massive long-haul cargo ship running an ancient global metal trade route all the way to Cornwall. It's like an intelligence officer being told to go defuse a bomb in an enemy capital, and instead he hops on a 3-year cargo ship to the literal edge of the known map just so the bomb will go off and wipe out his enemies.
That is the perfect analogy. He fundamentally believes he can outrun his duty by hiding in the machinery of global commerce. But instead, his presence brings a supernatural storm upon this Iron Age cargo ship, which introduces a profound irony regarding duty and righteousness.
Right, the storm is so violent that these seasoned mariner's men, used to Atlantic swells, are absolutely terrified. They start throwing all their valuable cargo, all that precious metal and commerce overboard just to keep the ship from splintering.
And when rowing and bailing fail, they cast lots to find out who brought this divine wrath upon them. Now, it's worth noting that before the arrival of the Holy Spirit at Pentecost, casting lots wasn't viewed as gambling.
Right, it was a culturally accepted binary system for divine revelation.
Exactly. It was used to allocate land, select kings, even replace Judas, and the lot falls squarely on Jonah.
So Jonah finally admits he is a Hebrew, running from the God who made the sea and the dry land. They ask him how to stop the storm, and Jonah says, "Throw me overboard." He is perfectly willing to drown if it means Nineveh still gets destroyed. But this is where the irony of innocent blood appears. The pagan sailors refuse to throw him in.
Yeah.
They actually row harder against the hurricane to save him. The men who worship pagan deities show a deeper reverence for human life and a healthier fear of the divine than the actual prophet.
Wow.
Jonah is perfectly fine with 600,000 Assyrians burning in judgment, but these rough sailors refuse to let one disobedient passenger drown on their watch.
The research connects Jonah's blatant defiance to contemporary failures in Christian duty, claiming a title while refusing the actual calling. There's a chilling poem carved into an ornate cathedral door in Lübeck, Germany, that perfectly captures this historical trap.
Oh, I know the one.
Yeah, it reads, "You call me master and obey me not. You call me light and see me not. You call me just and fear me not. If I condemn you, blame me not." It really highlights the danger of carrying a label without the obedience to back it up.
So what does this all mean for a modern audience? The research points out a very practical equivalent. Slapping a fish bumper sticker, the ancient ichthys symbol on a car, is entirely meaningless if a person's actions contradict their calling. You cannot outrow your own disobedience.
And the sailors eventually learned that exact lesson. Their rowing is completely futile against a supernaturally ordained storm. They finally pray for forgiveness, acknowledge the sovereignty of Jonah's God, and throw him into the sea. And the water instantly calms.
So Jonah sinks and is swallowed by what the text calls a great fish. Now, there is endless debate over the biology of this creature, right? Was it a whale, a shark?
People get so hung up on that. The original Hebrew uses the word dag, which simply means fish. The Greek translation from the 3rd century BC uses ketos, meaning a large sea creature or sea monster. But the biological classification misses the cultural point entirely. We have to look at Assyrian theology.
Right.
The Assyrians worshiped Dagon, the fish god.
Dagon, yes. The research notes that the fish head mitre, the ceremonial headdress worn by priests of Dagon, actually survives today in various modern religious and occult imagery.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. So think about the visual impact here. A foreign prophet gets spat out onto the shore by a giant sea creature, probably completely bleached white by stomach acid, and walks into a culture that specifically worships a fish deity.
That aesthetic detail is crucial to understanding the 10 miracles documented in the Book of Jonah. People just focus on the fish, but there is a massive sequence of supernatural events.
Like what?
Well, the storm itself, the law targeting Jonah, the immediate calming of the sea, the creature arriving at the precise moment, Jonah's survival inside it, his safe ejection, the repentance of the entire city, the rapid growth of the gourd plant to shade him, the worm that destroys the plant, and then the scorching east wind.
That's 10 right there. But out of all of those, the text argues the absolute biggest miracle is the psychological shift in Nineveh. 600,000 brutal, violent Assyrians, people who build monuments to their own invincibility, suddenly repenting in sackcloth and ashes based on the mere speculation of a single foreign prophet.
Yeah, from a purely sociological standpoint, it defies all logic. I mean, a fortress city does not surrender to a man without an army.
So why were they so incredibly receptive?
The research reveals a fascinating historical and astronomical alignment. Nineveh had just suffered two devastating back-to-back plagues, one in 765 BC and another in 759 BC.
And right in between those plagues, on June 15th, 763 BC, they experienced the Bursagal eclipse, a terrifying total solar eclipse that plunged the empire into darkness.
In ancient Mesopotamian cultures viewed total eclipses, especially when they were coupled with plagues, as undeniable apocalyptic signs of divine wrath.
Oh, absolutely.
The entire empire was psychologically, historically, and culturally primed for a prophet of doom. The timing was mathematically impeccable. Nineveh repented, and because of that, they were temporarily spared.
Though history shows they eventually returned to their violent ways and were utterly destroyed by the Medes and Persians in 612 BC, fulfilling the long-term prophecies anyway.
Right.
It is incredible to see how all these disparate pieces lock together. The integrated design of this text utilizes real, verifiable history. We're talking Iron Age global trade routes involving Britain, astronomical anomalies like the Bursagal eclipse, and massive geopolitical power struggles, all to teach a profound lesson about the futility of running from duty.
Exactly. We all face storms, and the research actually offers a synthesis on why these trials occur in the human experience. Sometimes a storm is designed to force personal growth.
Yeah.
Sometimes it equips an individual with the specific empathy needed to comfort others who will face similar predicaments later on.
And there was one concept that really caught me off guard in the text, the idea that human trials serve as a witness to angels.
Oh yeah, that's a fascinating angle.
That angelic beings, existing outside our physical constraints but unable to know the future, actually observe human struggles to learn about grace and resilience.
It frames human suffering and obedience not just as a personal journey, but as a cosmic demonstration.
It really does. When you stop viewing these ancient texts as simple fables and start examining the vast, complex, integrated reality underneath, the landscape is staggering. But I want to leave you with one final haunting question based on this material to mull over on your own. We all know the story ends with Jonah being spat out alive on the dry land. But wait, did he actually die in the belly of the fish?
It's a great question because Jonah's own prayer in the second chapter states, "Out of the belly of Sheol I cried." And Sheol is the original Hebrew term for the grave, or the underworld.
So was he literally dead for 3 days, physically residing in the underworld before being resurrected? It raises massive, terrifying questions about the biblical reality of the afterlife, the distinct architectural differences between Sheol, the Greek concept of Hades, the fiery judgment of Gehenna, and Tartarus, the prison for fallen angels. Did Jonah actually cross that boundary? We'll leave you to ponder that descent into the abyss on your own.
Thanks for joining us on this hour on the Archive Hour. Join us on our next hour as we bring you more adventures from the Bible.